Why are breakups so devastating for women? So, if you have ever been through a breakup as a woman or know someone who has, you know that sometimes women go a little cuckoo crazy after a breakup. I personally am a former divorce attorney. I'm aware of two women in my time as a lawyer who've actually attempted suicide in the midst of a divorce. So why is it that women have such a hard time with breakups? Well, there's actually a scientific reason, and I want to get into it today so that you can stop looking at breakups as just a casual thing that happens and understand why they are so painful, so that you will not only make wiser choices in who to give your heart to, but you can also have more compassion and empathy if you see someone who's struggling and going through a hard time in a breakup. And if you don't know who I am, hello, I am Wonder Woman, the glow up guru herself, and I'm here to help high achieving women negotiate success, power, love, all the things on their terms. So if that sounds like something you're into, definitely make sure you're subscribed. And if you like what you hear, please share this video with a friend. So why are breakups so devastating for women specifically? And to answer that question, we need to hop in a little time machine, go back in time, and think about what happened when we were little girls. When we were little girls, doesn't really matter where you grew up, you were often told stories about love, often told stories about a princess and a prince or some type of danger, being rescued, and then living happily ever after. And that implanted in your subconscious this idea that when love finds you, it will last. And so you go through adulthood and preteen years and whatever, and you have this subconscious belief that love lasts. And so you go into the world, you start developing all these hormones that, draw you into romantic relationships. And because you have this subconscious belief that love lasts, you take uncalculated risks, and risks that you maybe wouldn't take if you fully understood the dangers that were lurking around the corner. And one of the reasons that you do that is because the brain doesn't fully develop. I want to say until you're 25. I should have looked it up before I started talking, but you can fact check me, tell me in the comments what the age is. I believe it's the prefrontal cortex that doesn't fully develop until you're 25. So if you are making romantic decisions, you are doing it with a not fully functional brain, if you're doing it before 25, and you're doing it with this operating system in the background that's telling you that love lasts. So no matter how bad things get, or no matter how many red flags are, as long as you fall in love, it'll last. So in there's the one fairy tale where she kisses a frog and he becomes a prince, or there's another one where Cinderella, he has the glass slipper and he goes around and everyone puts it on and then she becomes a princess. She just had to get to the ball and then it'll all work out. There's this idea that it's all gonna work out. Well, guess what? The single biggest cause of pain in this lifetime is disappointment. And so when you have an experience, it's yes, the experience itself of heartbreak can be painful, but what's really painful, what's happening underneath the surface, is that your worldview was rocked because something happened that dramatically differed from the way that you expected the world to be, from what you thought the truth was. And I'm gonna adjust this so you can see a little bit more of the painting. And so when that happens, we experience pain, we experience suffering, we experience disappointment. And so we start our lives hearing these stories about love and adventure and bravery and courage, the prince and princess, they live happily ever after, happily ever after. And so you meet this person. For me, the first time it was really powerful, I was 18, I met this guy, told my mom I was gonna marry him. He's now married to someone else with kids. I'm so grateful. We wouldn't have been good for each other. But it was the first time I met someone I was I want to spend the rest of my life with him. I didn't even know him. I didn't know what I was talking about, but I just had these really strong feelings I'd never felt before. And there were a lot of glaring red flags that I overlooked because I just thought it was all going to work out. And, we both loved Jesus. We were both Christians. We met at a Christian internship. What could go wrong? Spoiler alert, 20 years later, plenty of people that met that same internship are divorced now. So lots of things could go wrong. Another story for another time. But anyway, I'm looking at my notes because I don't want to forget anything. So number one, why breakups are so agonizing for women, because we grow up hearing stories of love and things working out. And so it's that experience of the death of a dream. And so whether that is a boyfriend-girlfriend situation or whether it's someone that you're married and had children with and thought you're going to grow old with, and, even if things weren't perfect, you had this dream of the future together. And when you have to let go of a dream, it is one of the most painful things. I grew up wanting to be a professional ballerina. And so I did ballet from the time I was 3 until I was 23. And at 23, I went to college because that was me letting go of that life and saying, this isn't, a career path that I think is going to work out for me long term. Most ballerinas they're done dancing by 30. I was 23. I already had a lot of injuries, so I didn't think I'd make it to 30. But letting go of that 20-year identity was so painful. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what to do. Like, my whole world revolved around dancing and rehearsals and performances, and that's where my friend circle was. That was where most of my time was. So I just didn't know who I was or where I fit in the world. Well, the same thing happens when you leave, especially a long-term relationship or marriage. Like, you get into this rhythm of life where you have things that you do on certain days, people that you see, you have a pattern, a way of being together, an identity that involves being half of this unit, and all of a sudden that's gone. So the death of a dream, that is reason number one why breakups are so devastating for women. And it's not that men don't experience the death of a dream, but they're less likely to grow up being inspired by stories of love. They tend to be more likely to grow up being inspired by stories of bravery, by heroes who overcome challenges. And so their hope of a future is more about building something and becoming someone and doing something for society than it is finding love. So number one, reason why it's so painful, the death of a dream. But then we need to get back in the time machine and go even further back to understand why it's so painful, and go back to prehistoric times. And the reason for that is the human body changes very slowly. It takes hundreds of thousands of years for the human body to change, but human society changes very quickly. And now that we have technology, things happen even faster. And so technology allows for ideas to circulate at a faster rate, right? And as ideas circulate faster, culture changes faster. Norms get questioned, things shift. One example is pornography. So I did a research paper on pornography a little over a decade ago. And if you want to hear more about that, ask in the comments. I can make a video. And one of the things I found was that pornography was used to inspire the French Revolution, because at the time, the view was that the monarchy was descendant from God, and the revolutionaries would post pornographic images of the royals. And what that did is it made people see them as human, which then made it easier to justify a revolt. So circulation of different ideas literally shifts culture, changes beliefs, norms, attitudes. But to understand your reaction, you have to understand what happened beforehand. So the human body evolves very slowly, meaning we live in a world that has all these different norms, but our body is still acting as if we lived in a different world. And so we will react to sitting in traffic, right? We will react the same way that our body did to a saber-toothed tiger attacking us thousands of years ago, because the human body hasn't caught up with technology. It doesn't understand you're in a car, right? It understands for a long time, the biggest threat was saber-toothed tiger, or like weight loss. For a long time, the biggest threat to survival was food scarcity. So the ability to become obese wasn't even a thing until very recently. And so now people are trying to lose weight and struggling, and they're fighting against years of evolution, because the body is like, no, like for the majority of human history, I've helped you survive by holding on to weight fiercely. So what happens when you diet? Your metabolism drops and your body releases a hormone, or your brain releases a hormone called ghrelin, Ghrelin makes you hungry. And the reason is your body's like, we know what to do. We've been doing this for hundreds of years, longer than you've been around. Body weight starts to drop. We've got to slow down the metabolism and get you to eat, so that when there's periods of food scarcity, you've got enough reserves to live. And that's why it's so hard to lose weight. And that's why intermittent fasting is such a great weight loss tool, because it takes you kind of back to the body's original mechanism of alternating feasting and food scarcity. Anyway, so prehistorically, what would happen? In order for a man to have access to a woman's body, he had to first gain the approval of the tribe. He had to demonstrate that he was a man. And each tribe, each culture throughout history has different rites of passage that a man has to do to earn the approval of the tribe as being a man, no longer a boy, and therefore worthy of a woman. A woman was a prize. Now it's debatable, but it was understood for the majority of human history that a woman was something that had to be earned, not something that was, men were entitled to. So before you would ever have sex, a man first had to prove himself, gain the approval of the tribe, and then perform whatever ceremony was required to establish that he was going to be responsible for you and any children that you had together. That is what the body knows. Like the whole girlfriend, boyfriend thing, like we can intellectually be like, oh, we're just dating, it's just casual. But your body has wiring that's ancient. And so when you break up with someone, the only kind of cellular memory of something similar to that happening, like throughout human history, was when your partner died, because that would be the only way that you would suddenly no longer be together. It was death, till death do us part. Where did that come from? Human tradition. It wasn't groundbreaking at the time. It was just of course, till death do us part. Water is wet. What's newsworthy about that? It's only newsworthy now because we've done things that have interrupted the ability to stay together, but more on that in just a minute. So why is, a breakup so hard for women? One, death of the dream, because we grew up hearing childhood stories about love, but two, because our bodies literally register it as a death. And so we mourn as if our husband had died. And I just think if more women understood that by agreeing to get into casual relationships, you are entering into an involuntary, unconscious process where your body is registering this man as someone who's been vetted by the tribe, as someone who's performed public rites of passage. And so it's putting him into this position that throughout human history was only available to a husband. And to get him out of that position in your consciousness, the only way that it understands, the only kind of language it understands is, oh, he must have died, right? And so what happens when someone dies? We have a funeral, we cry, we bury them, flowers, we mourn, we grieve. There's some outlet for that grief. But when you have a breakup, especially in the modern world, you're expected to just kind of shake it off like nothing happened. And if someone had actually died and you told them, oh, just shake it off, get over it, act like nothing happened, you would be seen as a monster, like a sociopath, right? Everybody would understand if you were sad because someone died, was no longer with us. You get a lot of compassion for that. But with a breakup, we don't react the same way. But what I am here to say today, my argument, if you disagree, call it a theory, whatever, is that breakups are so traumatic because to a woman, the only way that your body can really process what happened, because this whole boyfriend-girlfriend thing is new, is, oh, he must have died. So let's respond as if he died. And so it unleashes this flood of grief and sadness and sorrow that would be totally appropriate if he was in fact dead, but he's not. And the process is involuntary. So there's not really anything that you can do to circumvent that grief other than a mutation. And so that mutation is what is required to participate in the myth of hookup culture. When I say the myth of hookup culture, what I mean is women are not physiologically, emotionally, psychologically wired to not be chosen. We're wired to be chosen. We're wired to, be selective and have multiple options and multiple suitors competing for us, and then pick. And for that one that we pick of the ones who, for them to feel like they won something. That is what there is a human history of. There isn't a human history of men kind of sampling you and then catch and release, throwing you back to the wolves. And so we don't know what to do with it. Throughout history, there have been, prostitutes and whorehouses and so men have had, outlets for women that they didn't see as wife material, but those women were also kind of relegated to that. There was never an expectation that they'd be more than that. And so I'm not saying that they didn't have the same psychological grief when someone moved on to their wife or whatever, but it was different because they weren't expected to ever be the wife. Whereas now there are women who are not sex workers who are expected to behave like it and are told that you have to behave this way if you want to have any chance of ever becoming a long-term romantic partner. And most of the time it won't work out for them. So when I say a mutation, what I mean is the process of getting attached to a romantic partner is sometimes referred to as pair bonding, and it's healthy and it's linked to human survival. So if you go back to the prehistoric times, when we lived in caves, if you were a woman who pair bonded with your husband, he'd go off and hunt and then come back with food and he'd bring it back for you and the kids, and then you'd all survive. If you didn't pair bond, you might leave him because sometimes hunting took a while. And if you left him, you and the kids might get eaten by some predator in the wild because the protection was in the tribe. So pair bonding ultimately is something that women evolved to do for husbands, the benefit of husbands and children, so that the unit could stay and so that they could be provided for. And so if you are wanting to opt into this hookup culture myth, the only way for you to do that is for you to sever or interrupt your ability to pair bond. So I've had conversations with women, especially high achieving women, because we are the ones who are the most in our heads and the least likely to really be aware of what's happening in our bodies. I've had conversations where they say, oh, I can hook up with people and not feel anything. I can detach feelings. And the times that I've heard it, it's been said as almost like a badge of honor. And what I'm trying to explain right now is that is not a good thing. It is a good thing to get attached to people that you are romantically involved in. It's normal, it's healthy. And the more that you interrupt that process, the more that you shove that down, the more that you engage in behaviors where you are experiencing over and over and over not being chosen, what you are doing is damaging something that was put in place, one, to help ensure that you would be provided for, but two, it's the same ability, skill that allows you to bond with children if you have them. And even if you don't, you might have nieces and nephews, but your ability to form intimate, close, meaningful connections with people, that's what pair bonding is. And so when you are, as a woman, engaging in relationship after relationship after relationship where it's intimate and you're not being chosen over and over and over and over again, it's one, kind of reinforcing this idea of rejection, which is very devastating for you, and two, interrupting your ability to pair bond, which will ultimately interfere with your children's experience of love and security and safety if you have them. If you don't have them, then the children that are important to you, if there are any nieces, nephews, friends, kids, whatever, they won't be able to experience you as safe and loving, as consistent as you would want them to. So for all these reasons and more, it's painful. And then the other one I'll add is a little bit more metaphysical, but it's the idea of soul ties. So we are all, like this video, you're seeing my body, but I am not my body. I am a spiritual being that has a body, and you are too. And so when you are in a romantic relationships with someone, there is a connection between both of the energy centers, spiritual centers that exist in all of us between you and that person. And certain things strengthen the tie between you and another person's soul. When I say certain things, heightened emotional exchanges. So positive or negative. So you can form a soul tie literally if road rage, when you have a back and forth with someone in traffic, even if you don't get out of the car. But with a romantic partner who you're seeing consistently, you're having these emotional highs with or fights with or whatever, when there's strong emotional back and forth, a soul tie is formed. And when there's physical intimacy, a soul tie is formed. And so for some people, they're walking around with ties to hundreds or more, of souls. And why that matters is because when there is a tie specifically between a woman and a romantic partner, regardless of whether it's male or female, but just to keep it simple and just say female, male, the woman is more likely to give energy and the man is more likely to receive energy, which is why for a man to give resources and for her to receive them is only fair, because she gives energetically, the invisible, the nurturing, the safe, the safety of, her love and her warmth, and he provides physical shelter and protection. So that is what kind of completes the circle for it to be a fair exchange of giving and receiving on both ends. She gives the intangible, he gives the tangible, and then the relationship is balanced. Well, if you have soul ties with someone who you're with, who's no longer with you, they're literally able to drain you of energy, which is also why after a breakup, you can feel very lethargic, because there's literally someone who's connected to you energetically. And unless you know how to break a soul tie, sever a soul tie, that connection remains, sometimes for years. So I have a girlfriend who dated someone in college, and she's in her 50s now. And she's engaged now, I believe. I need to double check. But, she, well into her 40s, was still talking about that guy from college who moved on and, got married and had a whole life and probably forgot her name. Why? Because of the soul tie. And, because we live in a world where we're so focused on facts and science and statistics and not really into the invisible, we discredit the power of the things that we can't see. And that's really unfortunate, because soul ties are real and they are very painful to break. And not everyone knows how to do them. But if you've ever done it, or if you've ever, broken one yourself, it's not always pleasant. The aftermath is really pleasant, but the process itself isn't. But also remaining connected to someone who's just draining you and offering nothing in exchange isn't pleasant either, and it will interfere with your ability to make money. It will interfere with your ability to advance in your career. It is just so not worth it. So, severing the tie is important, but it's painful. And so what are some solutions? Because I hate to talk about problems and not talk about solutions. Number one is just knowing what you want. So if you're going to be outside dating, frolicking at all, putting yourself at risk of, making your nervous system think that you're experiencing a death, start by being clear about what you want, so that when you see it, you can be like, oh, that's what I'm looking for. And so that you can make calculated risks. And, with making calculated risks, know kind of what the general qualities are of a man who's worth finding, and know what the general qualities are of, a man to run away from. And if you aren't sure what those are, I have created a course. It's called Luxury Love, and I'll put a link in the description box below. But it's short and sweet, and it just talks about all the things of, attracting someone who elevates your life, as opposed to what I see too many high-achieving women do, which is attracting men who are more of a curse than a blessing. And we don't want that for you, because you are too fabulous. So if you don't know, then definitely get that course. It's short, it's sweet. It'll break down everything you need to know. There's a checklist in there for quality men, so you can know, because there's a lot of often overlooked traits of really great guys. And so what happens is the bad guys get more attention and airtime, and the good guys go unnoticed until they're married. And then when they're married, like the girls that ignore them are like, wait, he's a great guy. And listen, I am no exception. There was a guy I could have married. I met him when I was 19, and I took for granted how much he liked me. I was like, oh, he'll always, he'll always. And so I told myself, okay, when I turn 27, if I'm still single, I'm just going to marry him. Well, about a year before I turned 27, he met someone, and I thought nothing of it. I said, well, he's liked me for so long, like, whatever. And let's see, I turned 27 in May, and the two of them got married in like July. I was okay. Adele came out with an album that year, so I had plenty of songs to cry to. Rolling in the Deep was that album. But the point is, a lot of fantastic women, myself included, will sleep on guys who could be perfect for them because they don't know what to look for. And so to stop all that, I created Luxury Love so that you can confidently date and not waste your time and have a strategy and not put yourself at risk of, needing to heal from someone that you wouldn't have dated if you knew a little bit better. So this video has been a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. I hope it was helpful. If you like it, please share a takeaway in the comments below. And if you have a friend who is maybe struggling with getting over someone or dating someone you wish they would break up with, then send this to them so they can be thoughtful about not wasting their own time. That's all for now. Bye.